Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols Plus, a PlayStation podcast supplement. I don't know what episode number this is. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined today by a very special guest, returning guest, friend of the show, friend of mine, David Jaffe. My friend, how are you?
Hello, Colin Moriarty.
Oh my God.
I have decided we shall go on a quest to finally put an end to this Sherlock Holmes bastard. You just froze. Are you there? Okay. Anyway, what's up, man?
Hey, man. Hey, I'm sorry about that, by the way. The everything for us will degrade, but it looks good for the recordings. It will sound good for the recording, so don't worry.
It's very important because I put a lot of effort into how I look.
Yes, I know. Yeah, me too. Clearly, I have well, you can't probably see through my chair, but I have like boxes all behind me. It looks horrible in here right now.
Right.
Well, my friend, it's good to see you.
It's always good to see you, Colin.
I invited you on a couple weeks ago, and we got this worked out. I really have no agenda. What ended up happening actually was I had first wanted to talk to you about Hogwarts Legacy and all of that, and we can get to that. But there are just so many other things I want to pick your brain about. And typically when you and I speak, we just kind of go down various rabbit holes anyway.
Yes.
So I wanted to just start at the top and just, how is everything going? How do you feel like everything is going right now in our ecosystem? How are things flowing? We're getting into a quiet period now.
You mean games?
Games wise, yes, of course.
Okay, because I was going to tell you just briefly.
Yeah,
I have to tell you.
Please.
We had Indian food last night.
Oh, jeez.
And somebody plugged up the toilet, and I can't plunge it, so I'm waiting for a plumber. And all I can tell you is the smell, Colin. I'm like the Ukrainian folks. It's like they make their own Molotov cocktails, and it's like that's how they, send them a bunch of Indian food in toilets and bags. The Russians will go running for the fucking hills and never come back. It's chemical warfare in these bathrooms right now because the toilets are stopped up with Indian food. It's the worst.
Yeah, that's great. It's so funny you say that because I just had we fixed it with a plunger, but I clogged up a toilet a couple of weeks ago, and my girlfriend had to go to the Walmart or whatever to get a plunger because I'm like, we don't have a plunger for some reason. It's one of those things you don't think about just buying and having. At least I haven't.
How long have you been dating her, Mika? Micah or Mika? Mika.
It's Micah. Micah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know, like a year and a half, I want to say.
So are you at the point where if you clog up a bathroom with really bad Indian food, you're like, look, just stay down the hall.
She's pretty cool. I'm pretty grotesque around her, to be honest. So
interesting.
I've always been like that around people that I'm comfortable around. Like I'm just like whatever.
Right.
Yeah, she's very cool about that. I don't think I could be with someone that wasn't cool about that stuff, personally.
Yeah, a lot of people will tell you it'll fuck up your relationship. Like, don't pee with the door open and all. Don't But it does get to a point where you're like, well, what's the point then? I'm always on. Anyway, games, Colin. Let's talk about video games.
No, please. Good. Please.
I mean, I'm having a great time. I know a lot of people are yelling and arguing about a lot of stuff, but there's so much good stuff to play right now. I am playing. I made a commitment to myself. I have no idea if I'll keep it, but I'm really going to try to finish about 6 or 7 games that I have not finished over the last year and a half. But right now I'm very deep into Elden Ring. I love that game. I'm over 120 hours in. I'm really enjoying Star Wars Skywalker Saga, the Lego game. And it's funny because it's not, I don't know if you've played it, but it's not, have you played it?
The Skywalker Saga?
Yeah.
I've played through episode 1. I'm in episode 2 right now.
Okay. Because the Lego games have gotten long in the tooth for me, so I was just like, I'm not really that interested. But it really does play. I mean, it's a third-person over-the-shoulder game. It's not this, typical Lego isometric, hit circle to build shit and simple puzzles. It's really fun. So I'm playing that. I just started playing Fatal Frame: Legend of Dark something. The new one.
Micah was playing that on Switch, I think.
It's really good. It's really good. And then I played over the weekend. I played 2 things. I played a demo of a game called the Mortuary's Assistant, which is a horror game coming out in a couple of weeks. And it is at least the demo. And I don't get scared a lot. I will say, as I've been smoking more pot, media scares me more, and I love that.
Yeah, right.
Horror scares me more, and game horror scares me more. And I was playing it on stream the other day, and it was very like, oh shit. I love that. So Mortuary's Assistant. And then I played a game that came out a while ago, but I just got around to playing it, called Teenage Blob, which is a band got together with a developer, and they said, let's just mash up our new album with your games, and it's this like 30-minute just explosion of kind of mini game joy mixed with an album of like really good kind of punk pop music. And I finished that this weekend, so I'm playing everything. I'm
Nice.
loving it all. Loving it
Right
all.
on,
What
man.
about you? What are you playing?
Well, this year it's been, I'm looking at my trophies just to follow it through. Like, it really was like some stuff in the beginning of the year, Infernax, which I have to get back to. That game was fucking dope.
Which game?
Infernax, it's called. It's
Oh
basically
yeah, no, I know that game.
yeah,
I played that
Castlevania
game.
2 ode, basically. It's very
wonderful,
cool.
wonderful game.
But I went to Horizon, Platinum that. Elden Ring, I played for about 20 hours. I'm just not good enough for these games. I don't have the patience. I am more of a square to win kind of player with action games. I like playing games on hard, but I don't need all the mechanics, all the, it's too much for me. I just don't enjoy it.
It is an investment. It is. You have to be in a mindset for it. Like if I was 13 years old and I had the summer in front of me, that would be the perfect game. Because I would, but I get it. It's not for everyone. I'm stunned that it sold how well it has.
Oh my God, me too.
Thrilled, but yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. Keep going.
No, it's all good. I will say you're absolutely right, by the way. Elden Ring's selling extraordinarily well. I think it's a great sign. I'm happy it's doing well. I'm not one of those guys that wants it to be something else. I just know that it's not for me. I try to go into these games every few years with an open mind. The original Demon Souls, Dark Souls, which I tried like 3 times. Bloodborne's really the only one that captured me.
Love
and
that
even
game,
that I didn't beat all the way through. So I don't know. But I think I was just eager to go on to something else. So then I Platinum Ghostwire Tokyo. I think that's a really good game, a really special game. And I actually reached out to Pete Hines. I don't usually email anyone, but I was like, I just wanted you to know this game's awesome. And I doubt you guys are getting many compliments about this game, but I think this game is really special and weird. It's like an allegory about Japan. And I don't think anyone's playing it, but I really enjoyed that.
I avoided it because I thought the state of play they did didn't answer any questions. Like, what is the loop? What are the core loops of this game? What do I do? And then it came out and everybody said the world was great. The world building was great and all that. But the game gets it's almost like an arcade time crisis shooter kind of game. And I still don't really know what it is. And so I'm kind of waiting either for a meaningful price drop, which I have to imagine is coming.
Yeah, I think so.
Or I'll just pick it up because enough people say it's good. You're the first person I've talked to though that said, oh, this is really, really good. Like you should play this.
Yeah, I'm trying to, I'm looking up now. I thought most downloaded March, I think 2020.
Oh, it was number 9.
Yeah, number 9. Yeah, you read my mind. I mean, we were always simpatico. Where I thought that list on PSN was interesting because it showed Horizon's fall off, but also a game like Tiny Tina's Wonderland's doing much better than I thought it was going to do. I'm really intrigued by that game. But then I wanted to ask you about one more thing, if I might. This is the game I'm playing most recently, and I think you might have played it on Game Pass before, but Nobody Saves the World has come out.
I have not played it yet. I hear it's really good. It has a slow start, but it's really good.
So I must admit, I just know from Moby Games, my name's in the credits of this game. I'm not saying this for any reason, like in the special thing. No connection. This is definitely my game of the year so far. And I really, I feel like, I was reflecting to Micah, and I wanted to ask you about this. This reminds me of a game that we wouldn't have seen any further than the late PS2 era, where I feel like someone would have walked in or seen it at PSM or walked into the store and been like, yeah, that's a $50 game. And it's like Alien Hominid, or it's like Earth Defense Force, or one of those like quirky games that wasn't quite AAA, but you were happy to pay for it. And it was good. And I saw it on PSN for $23, and I'm like, that's a fucking steal. Because this game has so much density of new ideas and interesting ideas. I think you'd love it. Like, I really think that you'd absolutely love it.
I will play it, and it's on my Game Pass to play list because it came out on Game Pass, and it's one of those things that I think there was another. Everything. I don't want to get into a Game Pass thing unless you do. I mean, my
always happy
feelings on all that stuff. But well, it's just interesting in that one of the things I was hoping, and it's not it's still early in the game, but it seems maybe it's going this way. One of the things I was hoping for with subscription services, because we see it on movie and TV subscription services, is exposing gamers to a lot of things that they wouldn't traditionally go into a store or a PSN download store or wherever you get your game, Steam, and purchase it. So Nobody Saves the World's a great example, but on the bigger side is like Guardians of the Galaxy, and how well Guardians apparently has been doing since it's come to Game Pass. I have to assume it's going to be coming to PS Plus very soon. To me, it's like, for whatever reason, people avoid things that aren't, the sure things or marketed to the moon. And as a guy who loves the medium and loves to play all up and down the budgetary spectrum, I'm just like, this is wonderful for the medium because people are able to discover this stuff. I was watching, I don't want to be too long-winded of it.
No, please.
Me and the kids and the ex last night, we watched Parenthood from 1989, the Steve Martin movie,
Right.
right? And we were looking at all the trailers on Apple TV and stuff, and it's like, stuff like Field of Dreams and all these 80s and 70s and 90s movies. And we were just lamenting, me and my ex, it's like we don't get movies like this anymore in the theaters. It's like they're all sent home because the only thing people go to in the theaters are the big movies because it's so expensive. So with games, I just love that something like Nobody Saves the World or Guardians of the Galaxy or Teenage Blob or even this new thing you've got coming out. I didn't know it was a platformer.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I'm the shooter. I can't play shooters, so I didn't really even bother to download it. But the new one, I'm very interested in. Even that, I don't know if you guys are thinking of PS Plus or Game Pass or whatever.
Well, we pitched it to Game Pass. They declined us.
What did they say? What was the reason?
It went through our associate producer, so I don't know the specifics. But they just said, thank you. Or you submit your stuff, your deck, and all that, your package, and then they get back to you like a month later and say, like, we appreciate your interest, but we're not, we're going to pass at this point. And I'm like, I understand. We really are just interested, even though I know I'd be NDA'd, and so I couldn't say it publicly. Just for my working knowledge, I would have really been interested to know how it would have worked, and that was really what we were interested in. But yeah, we're totally focused on that. But I think you're right, because we say we want to make what I call weekend games, right? $10 investments, almost like no-brainer investments, interstitial games, and we're not trying to take up 100 hours of your life. And we also want to just make game maker pixel games. I mean, that's what we want to make. So
are both your games in Game Maker? Both
yeah, everything we've done is in Game Maker so far.
Oh wow, okay, cool.
And we were doing that for Vita specifically, but now we don't need to do that anymore.
People don't talk enough about Game Maker. They talk about Unity and this and that and the other, and those are great things. And if you want to get into the proper business, like I want to go work at Sony or Naughty Dog, you should learn Unreal 5, and I mean they have their own engine, of course, but there's a lot of similarities. But if you're just like, I have a vision, I want to do my own shit, just fuck off. Game Maker is the shit, man. It's
awesome, especially for 2D, easy to plug things in and all that. So, but you hit on exactly what I was thinking, Jaffe, and what I wanted to ask you about with Nobody Saves the World and Drinkbox, awesome studio in Toronto.
Yep.
You said exactly what I was thinking. Again, this simpatico thing where you're like,
do you want to fuck?
A little bit.
Is that where this is going?
Well, I kind of wanted to say that to the end, but
I've never put my PP in a man, and I don't think I want to, Colin. But I will tell you, for you, if I can get those really cool pins that your sister makes for my hat,
oh my god,
I'll stick it in there, Colin.
Oh my god,
I'll imagine that you're Selena Gomez, but that said, it's going in.
A hole's a hole.
It's going in. A hole's a hole. All right. Sorry.
I'm writing down. No, it's all good. I'm writing down my note pins for Jaffe. We can hook you up with those.
Perfect. That's simpatico. Why?
Because you said something about like how the movies like Parenthood, Field of Dreams.
Yeah.
These movies did exist in the theater. They were the things that stood along Terminator and Aliens and all this shit. And then you said eventually it's just people want to see Spider-Man and they just want to see whatever. I don't know.
I don't think they just want to see it. I think if you're going to spend the kind of money that you're going to spend to get to a movie these days and popcorn and parking and all that shit, I think it's more about going, okay, unless we're like 15 years old and we're going to see the latest, Blumhouse horror movie on the weekend, I'd rather just stay home because it's just as good, if not better. I don't think people don't want to see other kinds of movies, but they don't want to pay $26 a ticket and all that shit.
But I think that's true. But I guess what I'm wondering is, when I look at a game like Nobody Saves the World, and then I look at the complaints about, oh, Far Cry is just another open world and just another shooter and whatever. And I'm like, but then they're like, I don't want to pay for that. Or that's a Game Pass game. And to me, I look at that and I'm like, but we should not. I'm not saying, people always kind of misinterpret this, but it is what it is. It's like, we should be eager to pay for a game like this. Like, this is actually different. It's almost like, I think the audience, and I hate saying this, but it's like the audience is the problem, because it's this self-fulfilling prophecy of just the same old shit. You go get the same old shit, you spend it in the same old shit, you make the same old shit, you consume the same old shit, and just this endless cycle. And I was so relieved by Nobody Saves the World because it just feels so fresh and different.
There is a very, one of the things I've come to realize, and I at first I didn't like it, and now I'm just kind of like, well, that's how it goes, is that there is a meaningful, if not majority, I don't know yet, is it contingent? Is that the right word? Of folks who are gamers that they really only care about big budget, 4K, 8K, sound system, huge TV surrounding. That's why they game, right? So I realized eventually I was talking to a brick wall, not in a bad way, you like what you like. But when I was trying to say the exact same thing you are to a lot of these guys that I'll talk to on my show or their shows or whatever, and I'm like, I'm not getting anywhere. And they're telling me that I'm not a gamer. Well, I don't give a fuck, great, whatever. But it's like they just, what motivates them to play is very different. And so I agree it's the audience, but so far, and I do think this will change economically, there's no choice for it to change. Ultimately, so far they have ruled the roost in terms of the industries, especially like Sony. And they're getting better because they're doing these 10 games and whatnot. But Sony has doubled and tripled and quadrupled down on production value, the graphics, the animations, the nuance of the motion, and a lot of gamers adore that and eat that up. But it pushes the price up and up and up and up and up. And eventually there's going to come a point where something's going to give, and I don't think those gamers are going to like it. Whereas I think people like you and myself and other people that just kind of game what we play, whatever, because it's the game.
Right.
We're being served an incredible buffet, of options. And I think that's only going to improve and get better. But I agree with you about the audience being the problem. There is a group of the audience that it's like, I mean, they're not the problem. It's like, you like what you like, but
yeah, it is what it is almost, like it is what it is.
But I'm telling you now, if you're really getting off on the fact that, look, Naughty Dog has, and Naughty Dog's the best, but it's like, if you're getting off on the fact that Naughty Dog has decided to spend, God knows how much money to get procedural animation interaction with the environment. So if Ellie scrubs up against a wall, it's not just playing one or two canned animations. There's like 30 that can tween based on the AI. It's like, okay, sure, but I'm busy just trying to make sure I can get the headshot, on the bad guys. So,
right, exactly.
And also tech will help with that. I think I read this. I didn't see it, but Unreal 5, did I read this right? That they can procedurally generate buildings with already decorated rooms, like almost like procedurally. It's like, when we did, like, I remember the first time we had Windows and Twisted Metal, it might've been 2012. And I was so jazzed because when you drove past windows that were non-interactive, they had put stuff inside, but they had to hand place that shit and they had to go in and model all the, and now apparently Unreal 5 is like, I want a skyscraper. I want 30 floors. I want it to look like this. And it you can go in and tweak it. My understanding, though, is it can actually, okay, done. What level of fidelity do you want for your frame rate? Okay, this many, cool, we're done. It's cool, man. So yeah, it's going to help.
It is cool because I think there's going to be this whole spectrum of, like, in the future, this is a handcrafted game. We didn't no AI assistance or
right.
Whatever. And then on the other side of the spectrum, people are going to be excited about this idea, like those art pieces of art that are circulating recently, where it's like, we literally just told the computer to make this game and it did.
Oh, yes.
Like, because that shit's scary, but it's also interesting. It's scary because I'm like, this is not only is the art accurate, but it's not that bad. And that's what I'm scared about.
That's exactly right.
So you had brought up this variety and you had brought up Game Pass and not wanting to talk about it, which is totally fine.
It's not that I don't want to or care about it. People get sick of hearing me talk about it.
Oh, no, totally. I totally understand. Yeah. I wanted to talk about the whole cacophony of things with Spartacus or whatever they're going to call PlayStation Plus, whatever. I remain, even though we wanted to be a participant out of curiosity, I still remain a skeptic that this actually won't cause the exact problems that you're kind of talking about, which is this coalescing of only the sure thing. But there's no doubt that people are just loving this. So I assume you think that any...
Wait, just be clear. Yeah. Loving what?
A Game Pass. I'm sorry.
Not Spartacus. Okay.
Yeah, we don't know anything about this. Well, it doesn't seem like many people are loving this, but they love the idea of Netflix-style subscription services. I think this is great for gamers on a budget. I also think it's great for people that aren't looking to spend money on games, which I think is fine. I just don't think that's me, but that is me with, like, films. I would never go buy a Blu-ray. I'm going to just go on Netflix. So I'm not begrudging anyone that. But do you think that these concerns, now with more time and more thought, a lot of good games coming, now a competitor in Spartacus coming, do you think that these concerns are overblown as a game creator yourself? Because I just feel like it's going to create this ghetto of games and everyone's just like, we're just going to wait for it to come on Game Pass. We don't want to pay for games anymore. There's no a la carte stuff. And I just don't think everyone can survive. I fear for that personally.
Well, so what's hard about the Game Pass or any disruptive technology or service conversation is everyone's just speculating on the psychology of the users, and everybody's speculation is correct in that, yes, there are people out there that will respond to this service in the way Colin is saying, in the way Jaffe is saying, in the way Phil Spencer is saying. But what nobody seems to know is, which type of audience is going to be the biggest and thus define success or failure in that realm. So your scenario is absolutely viable that could happen. And my scenario is absolutely viable, but it depends on a number of things, right? So I talk to a lot of people who say stuff like, it's just going to be all these service-based games because that's how they keep you from churning and going to the next, going to something else or canceling your Game Pass, your Spartacus. And I say, okay, but you're basically describing a service that most people don't want. And it's like, if that's what it becomes, then it will fail and it should fail. But you're, sort of catastrophizing the scenario without that really being present right now, right? And so I look at it and I go, well, if it becomes that, I don't want anything to do with it. I no fucking way I'm paying Microsoft any bucks a month just to have a bunch of fucking service games that I get bored of in, a couple of days. But if they do what HBO does or Netflix does or Amazon does, which is like, look, we have audiences that like reality baking contest, and then we like, mainstream sci-fi stuff like the Adam Project and Stranger Things. And then we want to bring these real quirky things over from other parts of the world, like Squid Game, that becomes this massive hit. And then we'll make Tiger King, this fucking weird ass documentary that, if that keeps me from churning, because there's always something interesting on these services. If that's what it becomes, and we get our No One Saves the World, and we get our Mortuary's Assistant, and we get our Gone Home, and then the next month we get a big day one drop of a third party title. And then the next month, maybe because Spartacus is like, well, we're not doing our day one drops, but hey, next month in April or May is finally they're putting out God of War Ragnarok. It came out in the stores 14 months ago. Now it's here for May. And then and my fantasy with Sony is that they also start spending money on a handful of smaller but still first party DNA titles. Like I keep saying I would love for them to go to Kojima and say, look, here's 10 million bucks. I don't give a fuck what you do with it. You got to make a game and you got to deliver it. But we're budgeting that to be day and date. We're still going to have the great tech, the great engine, the great IP, but it's not going to be $220 million. I think those could work day and date, and they could actually blow the doors off Game Pass because their stuff is better first party so far than Game Pass mostly.
Yeah, I would agree with you
there.
there.
Xbox, sorry, yeah.
I totally. You had brought up HBO, and I agree. I think that's Sony's path to winning, in quotes, the subscription wars. That just double down on quality and just say, like, we are the HBO. Like, we have a great reputation. You're here for the reputation, right? And I think that would be good too. But I am interested to see how it all plays out. What I fear is that we might realize some things when the data's in where we're past the event horizon. That's the thing I fear.
What would that look like? Give me an example.
Well, I think that if you're making, and this better than everyone, you're making games with 4, 5, 6 year development plans. I mean, look at fucking Rocksteady, right? I don't even know how it's taking them this long to make that game. But this is going on, like you said, 150, 180, 200, $225 million games. And you set all this in motion. We say this all the time on the show when you see a good idea in a game and then it gets replicated in a game a half a generation later because it takes a long time.
Right.
That's the kind of stuff I fear where games are being engineered or made for these things or under assumptions that certain, commercial realities are going to be available, certain likelihoods of commercial success in terms of microtransactions or season passes or whatever the case might be. I just see like things getting baked into the cake that will come out at the end and not work out. It's very much like The Quarry, right? That recent supermassive game. The only reason that game's seeing the light of day is because Take-Two bought it and is bringing it to market. Google was making that game for Stadia, and when Stadia failed...
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I broke that story months ago, but that that's, that game would have been sealed away and just vaporware and never have come out. So that's just the kind of thing I worry about. It is all hypothetical. And the answer is that I really don't know because I think we just don't have all the data one way or the other. The only people who have more of the data than we do. And that's kind of the thing that, it's almost like religion with me, or maybe it's exactly like religion with me, which is agnosticism. It's like the people who plant a flag and say, this is what a subscription service is going to be. I'm like, okay, but you don't know that. You certainly don't have more data
than Microsoft. You certainly don't have more data than PlayStation in terms of the guys who are coming out of Yale and Harvard and all these business schools, and they hire to run the numbers and build the projections. And, the people who bash on Game Pass act like Phil Spencer had an idea in the shower and he came in and a couple days later, Game Pass was up. It's like how much work they put into analyzing what's going to work and what's not going to work and what's viable and what does marketing think. And, I'm not saying they're right. I'm not saying they can't fail. I'm just saying that none of us, including those guys that put those resources in, know how the audience is going to respond. So, but as for the event horizon thing, I mean, it's interesting because as I always say, I'm the most, I should have a t-shirt that says I'm the most progressive guy, because I'm a super fucking progressive. And I love that. I love progressive ideas and all that. But when it comes to free market, I'm a big free market guy. I'm not unregulated capitalism, but I believe in the free market, and sure. when it is fair, and it's not always fair, but when it's fair. And so to me, I'm just like, there's always going to be someone out there that wants to entertain us and gets it right. And so it may be that Microsoft and PlayStation screw the fucking pooch with this. But someone's going to make some quirky fucking phone thing or indie thing, or the next, Kojima's going to be working away on his Super Spy quadruple A game for Sony. And even though Spartacus falls apart, that comes out and we love it. So I don't worry so much about the medium. I think the medium is way stronger than the business. I mean, it's interactivity mixed with IP and storytelling and escapism. That's not going anywhere.
Absolutely.
So I'm good either way. So I'm not apathetic, but I am agnostic on it. I'm like, I don't really know what's going to happen. I can tell you what I think and what I would like to happen, but I don't know. Sometimes it gets, I am coming off a weekend where I just got into a big shit fest on Twitter with some people. And some days it would be like, can we just argue about games instead? It's like, you don't know where Game Pass is going. I don't know where it's fucking going.
Yeah. It does seem to be this, and I want to talk about fanboyism in a minute with you. Because it does all stem back into that, I think. But it's funny, just as to put a fine point on it, when Sony, or when all the news came out about PlayStation Plus, the new tiers, and then someone, I think Wario64 had tweeted out like, oh, there's a way for you to kind of like get basically free PS Now subscriptions, or like, $60 PS Now subscriptions that are going to be $120 or whatever.
Okay.
And people were adding them up and be like, oh man, I'm gaming the system. I'm getting 3 years, 4 years. And people are like, how many years did you get, Colin? And I'm like, none. I'm telling you, I don't want this. I don't know why, just because it has PlayStation in front of it, you thought I was going to subscribe to this thing, So I wanted.
Do you have to cancel? Well, you don't have PS Plus, right? Because
I do have PS Plus, and it's mostly for cloud saves. I mean, that's literally like what I want it for.
So you're just going to go. You don't want it, but you will continue your subscription.
I'll continue my baseline thing, right?
Okay,
right.
Gotcha.
Just you get little discounts here and there, and
yeah,
and I'm totally happy with that. But it's just to put a point on it. Like, I am a PlayStation fan, but I want to see what this thing's going to be first too. I was surprised by how people are leaping before they even look. And,
I was interested. Yep. I listened to you guys, you and Chris and Dustin the other day talk about Spartacus. And I had not thought about this because I am a PS Plus and a PS Now subscriber. So I already have a Sony service in PS Now that has over 800 games. So what I assumed when Jim Ryan came out and said, we're going to have games on the medium and the platinum or premier, whatever it's called tier, I assumed, I'm like, okay, I know what that is. I have that now. I'm not that excited because the games on PS Now they're great games, but they're old. And it's like going into a GameStop and looking at, the bargain bin, not that they're bargain games, but they've been out for a long, long time.
Yep.
But then when you guys were talking about it, you guys were speculating almost like there was going to be a much more curated, almost like the Sony people were going to be like, okay, we've really thought through the PS1 collection. And for October, we're going to be putting out 10 games that, we're going to be putting out Jersey Devil on PS1, and we're going to bring back the original Silent Hill on PS1 or 2. I think it was 1. Silent Hill 2 was where, it doesn't matter. But, we're bringing that out, not the HD version, but the original version that we haven't been able to play for a long time unless you own the disc. And then I got a lot more interested if it's that. But if it's just like, here's this, boatload of games that are on PS Now, I'm like, I don't play them now. Why would I play them later?
Yeah, there's a whole constellation of possibilities with this, right? We were kind of, I think, wish casting in a way, because I think we know Sony well enough to know that they will take the path of least resistance. But what I had thought, and you remember perfectly well the virtual console days on Wii, there was something special about that, because for at least it was annoying after a while, I know, but it was cool where like every week they'd be like, here's a Genesis game, here's an NES game, and next week here's an N64 game, and I was like, this is really neat. You don't have to put it all up. And what I was hoping was Sony would, curate a little bit, like you said. They have the patents for tech trophies to put trophies in emulators. It would be cool if they actually put in the effort, because all the games you're talking about are really like a glut of, which is fine, of PS3 and PS2 classics, but I don't think it counts like PlayStation Minis, PS1 classics, like and all of that. So, and there's just a whole group of games also on PS4 and PSP. We've never seen that. So my hope is that they do it right, but I don't think so.
I don't think so, because I don't think right now they think it's in their best interest. I mean, that's the kind of stuff you do either if you're like a niche provider like Shudder and you're like, okay, we can't compete with Netflix and HBO, but we're going to curate the fuck out of this horror channel and make this and I don't know if you like horror and if you like Shudder, but Shudder's fucking phenomenal.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So you're either in that boat or you're in the boat of we're in last place or we're about to lose the crown. And so we got to think outside the box and do some really innovative stuff. But yeah, if you're Sony right now, and I've had conversations, I can't tell you with who, I can tell you offline, but I've had conversations with people, and maybe you've had similar conversations with very high-ranking Sony people that will tell you the people above them, a lot of them aren't gamers. They don't game. They don't understand necessarily, not just, they know what the gamer wants because of marketing, but in terms of, it's not like they look, some of them are genuinely looking at it and going, we're in the driver's seat now, and the way we stay in the driver's seat is to just keep doing what we're doing. But how many business stories are there out there, and almost fables of the company that was in number one, and it was the company that was desperate that tried something new that disrupted everything? I mean, so it goes back and forth. Sony was that, and then they were PS3, and then they were that again with PS4, and now it almost feels like Sony's like, well, we could do that, but here's another Uncharted, here's another God of War, which is great. I know people love them, but there may come a point where the ground is shifting under your feet and they don't really seem to realize it.
Right. And this goes into the event horizon argument, right? About like games, it takes so long to make games and to make hardware and all of this, but by the time they realize it, it might be too late. I mean, I'm sure if they could undo the PlayStation 3 in 2007 or 2008, they would have.
Sure.
But they were like, we have to eat this. Like, there's literally nothing we can do about it.
Well, that's how you absolutely know for a fact that time travel isn't possible. Because if anyone was going to invent it, it would be Mark Cerny, and he works for Sony, and we wouldn't even be talking about the PlayStation 3. He's like, motherfucker, you should have seen what it was when we released it the first iteration of time. We've already gone back 4 times. You can't contain Kutaragi. That's the best we could do.
There's a reality where the Boomerang controller actually came out and all the rest.
That's exactly right. Yep.
So I wanted to segue this into this notion of fanboyism, because for some reason, and I know people are going to be like, because you're fanboys, but I feel like our conversations attract on the periphery fanboy arguments. And I feel like when I listen to your show, when I listen to my show, and I do my show, I'm like, there's nothing in the show that reflects this argument going on around the show, right? No. And that's why you were on that podcast when I had to go in on that one YouTuber and just be like, stop, distort it, you know? Yeah. Because I just feel like it's getting worse and worse, and I don't understand where this is coming from or why. I'm wondering if you have just any insight into what you think is going on out there, because I feel like the fanboy war stuff, listen, you were in the industry for a long time. You have great knowledge and insight into how it works and the way, the tenor and the cadence of the industry. And from a media side, I was there for 20 years. Like, it's never really been quite like this, where it's over the top, and maybe it's amplified by social media and
I'm sure that's
YouTube and all of that. But I'm wondering what you think. Do you think it's like a real thing, the rise of fanboyism again?
Well, hang on. When you say the rise of fanboyism again, or you mean the right?
Because
when did we have it before?
I would say the magazine era was interesting, but not as vehement, because there was no way to really.
Oh, okay, yeah. So it's never.
And then I think maybe the GameCube N64 or GameCube PS2 Xbox era, people are a little out of control, and there's always been fanboys on the periphery. So you're right. What I should say is this peak in fanboyism.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I've never experienced it this bad. Well, is because I guess you can monetize it, right? I mean, that's probably what it is that we've come to a point where, we have built a society around starting with CNN and then MSNBC and Fox News. And, people have been trained to not just create, but to consume anger and divisiveness. And it's fun. There's nothing wrong with Jerry Springer every now and then. There's nothing wrong with getting into the mud and wrestling a little bit. It's exciting, but it almost feels like we don't have the counter to that at an educational level. So people think that that's all there is. So like I went on this podcast a couple of days ago called, I don't know, it's King Roundtable. There's some real kind of some hardcore guys in there in terms of fanboys. Not all of them, but some of them. And I was just like, I enjoyed the back and forth kind of taking the piss and all that, like the theatrics of it. But then I ended up talking to this one guy that really seemed upset. And I was just like, who cares, man?
Yeah, right. I agree.
So I don't know. I mean, I will tell you that I don't know how much of it is nostalgia and how much of it is real, but I do think back to the days, and I've talked about this before, where my friends had in television, I had Atari, and we didn't hate each other, and we were like, oh, I want to come over to your house and play Advanced Dungeons and Dragons.
Right, exactly. That's exactly the way I felt. Yeah.
Right. And even with, Nintendo and, and Sega, it was just like, let's debate games. Let's debate gameplay. Why is Elden Ring good or bad? Or what do you like about, what don't you like about it? But this is the equivalent of, not even people like to think, oh, it's like sports teams. No, it's not like sports teams. This is like, you don't care if I like Auburn and you like Alabama. You're more concerned about the arena they're playing in. It's like, I'm only going to go see them at, I was going to say the Staples Center, but it's the Crypto Center or whatever.
Right. Yeah, they renamed it.
I'm only going to go see them at Legion Field. That's the only football I watch is at Legion Field. I'm like, you're arguing about where you consume the art. Why don't you argue about the art? But I guess that's not interesting to them.
Yeah, I agree. It's like I've said before that I think the most disenchanted I was with games was during that PS2, Xbox, and GameCube era when I really tried to have it all and do it all and play it all. People often ask me, like, why do you focus in on one platform? And I'm like, I'm a fan of a platform. I don't deny the use of the other platforms. I operate at this almost obsessive level with things, which people know, where I'm like, if I can't get something, like everything out of something, I'm not even interested in it really. So I realized that I could just mine this one console, play most of the games that are relevant on it anyway. I'm not really missing much. And then, you plug in your Xbox or your Switch when you really have to. But I think people go into it knowing our show with Sacred Symbols, they expect almost that fanboyishness. And I think that they are often surprised to find that it does not exist on the show. And that's why I feel like it's so important to fight back about it, because I think it's okay to be a fan of a PlayStation or a fan of Nintendo or whatever. And it's like, this is what I like. This is what I play. This is the ecosystem. I have this amount of hours. I have this many games. I have this many trophies. I'm kind of captured, whatever the case might be. But I've said before, if it were possible and it were revealed that I was the only person that played PlayStation in the entire world, where it was just like, this is literally only you're doing this, to be like, well, okay. I mean, it doesn't really change anything for me. My other people getting in on it doesn't change it for me. Other people thinking that what I like is good doesn't do anything for me. I don't care. And I think that there's just too much. There's too much of that, like fighting subjective things. And I don't know.
I think it is because it does, what I'll say is where my show's different from yours is that you guys are consistent about it. I'm consistent about it at a philosophical level. If you actually listen to me talk, it's like, I'm never, ever a console war, but will I put out a cheeky thumbnail? Like I put out one the other day of a PS5 on fire. And I'm like, I called it, I hate PlayStation, but I made sure to put in the parentheses of the title, am I doing it right, fanboys, right? I mean, it was me. Clearly, I don't hate PlayStation, right? But some people will only see the headline, which I kind of like. I kind of like the fact that I can have somebody come on my show and say, you said this. And I'm like, aha, gotcha, you fucker. You didn't actually put the work in to watch the video, read the description, engage in the conversation. You're a shallow motherfucker and I got you, go away. I do enjoy that, whereas I think you guys are more adult and classy about it. You're just like, we're not going to even get in the mud. And I'm like, ooh, I like the mud. As long as we all know the mud's bullshit and it's not the real thing. That's the dessert topping.
Right.
It's not the meal.
Well,
You know?
what it reminds me of is, in some way, just the consistency angle, because you are consistent, and I feel like we are too. It reminds me of what my dad used to say, whose dad didn't say this. It's like, when you lie, then you have to kind of remember what was true and what wasn't, and you have to like kind of construct these new realities and so on and so forth. And I feel the same way about it's just like politics, where it's like, well, whatever's good for one party and is bad for the other party, I believe in. And,
right. Yeah.
But it's like, for me, it's just like, well, no, I'm just anti-war, for instance. Like, I don't have to really worry about that. I'm just anti-war. And with this stuff, with this fanboy stuff, we just don't want to have a reputation that's unearned, because the one important thing for our show,
you've already got that, so why need another one?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. But it's like, I'm wrong about things all the time. I say that all the time. I'm wrong about things all the time. I just want people to understand how I came to those conclusions. And I feel like you just have to kind of understand that most people are not going to put in the work to understand that, and you can't really do anything about it. And
and let me keep going.
No, please.
Well, I mean, I had my whole adult life has been a coming to this awareness, and it's so disappointing and so befuddling to me that it takes me a long time to. I still haven't fully accepted it, which is probably the crux of why I get into so many fights online with people, which is there are people you just can't reach. And in my mind, I always think, well, logic will do it. Even if I can't convince them, I can bring them around to say, okay, like what you're saying, I can't relate to caring about a platform. Like, I don't care if it's Dreamcast or Nintendo or Atari. I just want to play the games that those platforms offer. And they're all the same to me in regards to the ends. There are ends to a mean, there are means to an end, which is to have the interactive experience. But I hear what you're saying, and I'm like, okay, I'm not like that, but I got it. Okay, he really cares about the trophies and the ecosystem of PlayStation and the kind of games they make and the whole rigmarole. Cool, right? But that's how I'm used to approaching everyone. I assume everyone is coming to it with a mind where they don't really care as long as they can be honest with each other. They're not worried about winning or losing. And I'm continually surprised, even when you offer people facts. Like this podcast is fresh in my mind. I'm literally saying, people are saying, your takes on these games are terrible. You hated The Last of Us 2. And I'm like, and I literally made a video where I immediately cut to me praising and saying it's one of my favorite games that year. Did I at first not like The Last of Us 2 when I thought it was going to be a stealth game? Yeah, and then my audience that was watching me play said, Jaffe, no, you're getting wrong information. It is not a stealth game. You can play some areas stealthy. You can play it all stealthy, all action. It's really how you want to build out Ellie and Abby in terms of what they're carrying and all that stuff. And so I went back to it with that, and I'm like, oh my God, this game's fucking amazing. I love this game, But these guys that I was talking to were only focused on, but there was a thing where you said you didn't like it or you didn't want to play it. I'm like, yeah, when I thought it was a stealth game, I didn't want to play it. When I was educated that it wasn't just a stealth game, I played it and I fell in love with it. But they don't, the facts don't matter, right? It's just like, we're not interested in the facts, Jaffe. We're interested in the narrative that we can build, which again goes back to cable news. I think it's poisoned everything.
Yeah, it sucks. So, it totally sucks. And that's the other thing, just to finish off, is just, I'm often, I guess not impressed, but in some way impressed by how little a lot of these commentators even know about games, or about especially the creation of games, where games come from and how they're made, but just the ecosystem of games and the history of games. I'm surprised that there aren't more listeners and viewers of these different things that don't call these people out and be like, I don't think you have any idea what you're talking about, right? Like, I don't think you have any history here. I don't think you really understand how a game is made. I would love to just like surprise fucking ask people these questions about game development or about history.
It's probably above sacred. It's probably above Last Media, but that would be a great YouTube series. Just Colin pops in and fucks everything up, and call it table tumping with Colin Moriarty. You just come in and fuck up their podcast and leave.
Too many people talking about things they don't understand, which bothers me.
Yeah. Well, but the thing is, though, that's maybe the realization is that's not why their audience goes there. It's not for data,
Right.
It's for tribal, a sense of belonging with people, which is one of the great things about the internet. So, I mean, at least, you're in a horrible street gang or you're in a horrible cult, but hey, at least you got people that you can talk to about Batman or something. I don't fucking know. You know,
Right.
I mean, I get it, but I think it's dangerous.
I want to ask you about game development. I don't know if you talk about this more deeply with your audience on a more daily or weekly basis, but do you have
Yeah.
any interest? I ask you about this every once in a while, but do you have any interest in getting back in? Are you getting courted or anything like that? I mean, are you
Well, I mean, you know, I'm consulting right now, and
right?
that's enough for me. No, I really, you know, that's one of the narratives that really does bother me because it feels disrespectful to me, which is, you know, Jaffe was fired by Sony. I never was. I've never been fired in my life except my first job in LA as a PA on the TV show Dinosaurs. But other than that, but yeah, you know, or Jaffe's salty because you know you know, Corey's God of War had better reviews, and I'm like, I don't know what else I can say to people. It's just like I did it. I think if I was someone like a Ken Levine or a Todd Howard, um, that genuinely loved the craft of making games, I would be in it till the day I died. But I never liked making games. Like I love doing this. I love editing videos. I love debating and discussing and communicating and turning that into something that hopefully eventually people enjoy. Uh, but the moment to moment of walking into the studio and mapping out a level or sitting with the coders and figuring out how to make the climbing mechanics work in God of War, or, oh shit, we've got 1,000 bugs. Jaffe, you need to figure out the 300 that you want fixed because we can only fix 300. That was excruciating, but it was worth it because the thing I loved was seeing the vision that I had and ultimately the team had, and it became our vision, connect with people and work and seeing them laugh and smile and get excited. All of it was worth it, right? But after a while, and you do it enough and you have enough success that you know what that feels like, and you have enough failure and you know what that feels like, and you go, okay, the only reason I would stay with this at this point is either A, money, and I'm certainly not a super rich guy, but I have enough money that I don't have to do that job right now. Um, and or B, um, because I just love the moment to moment, you know. But it's like in that line in Field of Dreams where the ghost, the baseball players say, I would have done this just for food money. I would have played. I love it so much. I would have played it just to make. If I could eat, I would play it. I don't need anything else. I never felt that way about making games ever, and so I feel that way about what I'm doing now. And so, and I'll probably never reach the heights of success doing what I'm doing now, doing what I did then. But I'm so much happier. I'm so much more pleased with my waking up and ooh, what do I get to do today? So yeah, I have no interest in going back.
Yeah, that's a really interesting answer.
I had $100 million deal. I was courted by a Chinese company. And
Oh,
I said, no, thank you,
right.
because you're Tencent
Oh
and I
yeah.
want nothing to do with you. And
Good,
it was
good for
bad
you.
because it was the Western Tencent. And it was a Western guy that I respect that was calling me. And I wasn't trying to shame the guy. And I hope I hope he's got thick enough skin and he's been an executive in the business way longer than I have. But I was just like, man, I don't want to do business with a company like that, with a government like that. And that's, he's like, well, why? And I'm like, or why don't you want to take the job, or why don't you want to continue talking? And I was just like, A, because in my head, I'm like, I love doing this, but B, because I'm like, dude, no, that's a horrible government. I'm not involved. I'm not doing it.
Yeah, I really respect and appreciate that because I don't think a lot of people are making those calls or even thinking about it. In fact, they basically laundered Tencent in the video game awards with that Level Infinite
Oh, yes,
branding,
that's right. That's
which
right.
I don't think a lot of people knew, like really knew. That's why we talked about it so much on the show. I'm like, they are laundering this stuff, guys. Like, I don't know how else to put it, right? Like,
Do you think, well, what, keep going. Keep,
no, that's
I
it.
got to ask you about the, well, okay.
Yeah, please go on.
Well, I want to ask you about the Game Awards because when Greg said fuck Bobby Kotick, was that a little too late? Like, I've been saying fuck Bobby Kotick for 3 years on my show. I assume you've been saying something similar.
Yeah,
His capitulation to China is horrible. His treating his employees is horrible. Who knows why he was in Epstein's black book, but I'm not going to assume because he was in that book, it means he was some kind of pedophile.
yeah. Who knows?
Epstein had a lot of contacts that had nothing to do with his horrible activities. But was fuck Bobby Kotick brave,
No.
or was it performative?
It was performative, obviously. I mean, it's also, it doesn't mean that it's not also right. We talk a
Well,
lot
of
about
course it's right. Fuck
right,
Bobby Kotick up his
right.
stupid fucking ass.
But I also say fuck Microsoft for enriching these people. I say fuck Microsoft for exposing
Oh, you
their
mean
entire
with
person. Yeah, like with purchasing this
the
company,
acquisition?
enriching all the people that did this, exposing their sterling work culture at Microsoft, which is very renowned for being a great place to work, to this shitty place. But nonetheless, it doesn't mean that it wasn't true. But yeah, I will say, I mean, I don't know him anymore, but knowing him, I had never heard him say.
I don't even mean to bring
Yeah,
up Greg like that.
yeah,
I'm bringing it up because you're bringing up the Game Awards, and it
sure.
reminds me of sort of like the fact that now Bobby Kotick is apparently he's under investigation for insider trading because of some breakfast he had a couple of days before the acquisition was announced. Warren Buffett, David Geffen, these guys are being looked at because they have a relationship with Bobby Kotick that they made, I think, on like it was like $100 million investment. They made $1 billion or some crazy jump. It's just I bring, and then today there's the news that says that Bobby Kotick may not be pushed out after the acquisition's done. And I'm just like, it's on my mind because I'm just like, these guys never seem to lose because they make the rules, you know?
Right.
I mean,
Totally.
the fact that Newsom, what the fuck is Gavin fucking Newsom doing? You saw that, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, we just did a with Rick Hogue, our legal analyst. We did an episode about that.
What was his take on? I mean, we can't prove anything. Obviously, it's just speculation, but it seems like there's smoke and fire in this case when you've got these people being fired that only a couple of months ago were being lauded by Newsom, and now he's firing them, and they're saying it's because the Activision acquisition came.
Hogue was saying his. I mean, it's like so above my pay grade, but what he was saying was that his take is that they were basically ruining California's relationship with the federal government because, you know, the federal government had their settlement with Activision, and then California was being like, we can do better, we can leverage more money. And at some point so California is suing the federal government in all the district courts. And he was saying, I mean, and this is kind of a layman's thing, but he was saying, Newsom's like, we can't be doing this, you know, like we can't be antagonizing the federal government and like doing all this kind of stuff. They settled it. The women are the victims. We are not if the women are happy with the 18 million, who are we to say that we're not going to take it? And so he was saying that because I was asking him, because I had kind of your more take where I'm like, this seems pretty fucking crazy. And he was, his take was, it's just the same old biased reporting, like with people without any context about like the greater political, legal, social ramifications in the state.
But he's talking about the 18 million, but why was it okay for Riot to get 100 million settlement? And but forget the 18 million. Yeah. They're talking now about, I think the current case that's against Activision, not the 18 million that was settled and done, right?
Yeah. Well, I think we were saying on the show, he was saying, I believe that the implication is that maybe it's not $100 million bad, right? Like maybe it's not as bad as what was going on at Riot, and maybe it's not as buttoned up, and you know, this, that, and the other thing. Because also, as far as I understand, one entity was charged with going into like the corruption shit, and one was charged with going into the sexual stuff. And I think they also crossed their wire. So I just think it's like more complicated than it seems.
Okay, so let me ask you this then. This goes to the heart of it then. Sure. So bias reporting, whatever, we know. In the sense that, yes, of course, that there's no surprise there if that's that always happens regardless, but certainly I know what you're talking about in this case. The people who are reporting it, and in my case, the people who are reading it, aka me, we are wired to believe the worst of these types of people. And I appreciate and understand that bias, and I'm willing to not be beholden to it if I have facts that prove otherwise. But I am curious about, is that just, is that gangs of New York shit? Is that caveman shit? It's like anybody who has the power is also suspect? Or do you think there's something specific about our time and age where it's less, it's harder to swallow than it's been in a long time, if ever, the fact that these guys seem to have everything and everyone else is kind of left with the crumbs? I mean, is that just my take? Or, because I know you're more of a libertarian. I mean, what is your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that someone actually sent me a video of me talking with the Soviet Union music behind it, because I think I'm becoming more left-wing over time with economics, not too far to the left, but just
right.
It's like, get yours. You know what was really inspiring to me was I listened to this guy, Mike Florio, who's a football podcaster, famous football podcaster, and he always talks about how there's no reason for anyone to root against a player making as much money as they can. Like, it has, like, even if you don't like the player and it's like a gratuitous amount of money for what they do on the team, it's like, who cares? They are taking the money in a major in a relationship of imbalance between billionaires and someone who might have 3 or 4 years on the field and is maximizing their value. And so I feel like we're in a situation, and I keep saying on the show, especially because we have a lot of developers listening, where I'm like, now is the time to go get your money. Now is the time, because the things seem a little unleveled. I think people are more cognizant of what you're saying, that the fat are fat, very fat indeed, and everyone else seems to be the exact opposite. And it can't help but bleed into my ideology. I just can't. I run a business, and if there was a disparity of 100x between me and Dustin, that would be a big problem. You know?
Well, Dustin, Chris, yes. Dustin,
yeah, Chris, yeah, all right. Well, fair enough. So I just feel like there's not enough people taking care of their own people. There's not enough people caring about the bottom line. And the bottom line is not what's black and red, but rather like the people that work for you and the value that they bring to the company. It's really that simple to me. And
but where did that come from? Why has that changed so much? Or has it always been that way? And we just have nostalgia for a time that never existed?
I think it's like always on a pendulum, right? Like, you think about the trust busting era and like the robber barons and the roaring 20s and just the incredible wealth disparity. And then after World War II, we have, not that anyone was paying anywhere near it, but we had 90% marginal tax rates, like insane. Like, you couldn't even imagine that existing. Right. And then it swings kind of back and forth. I feel like we're kind of just in this flux, in this tension that a capitalist system kind of puts out there, which is where it's just there are haves and there are have-nots. The only way that it can really function is for that to exist. And I think the idea is to just mitigate it as much as possible with social welfare and all the other things that, positive things that a government can bring to bear. I'm just disappointed in anyone who capitulates at this moment to a company. That's why I'm so glad to hear that you told Tencent to fuck off, because it's like,
stop killing people. Stop taking, I mean, again, and people are like, well, America's hands aren't clean. No, they're not clean at all. But we're also not, we also have a system that if we actually gave a shit, we could change it. We are not educated intentionally enough to know how to change it and have the will to change it. And we're distracted by companies that want us distracted and stupid and numb. But the system does exist that we could change it if we wanted to. In China, you just get picked up off the street if you go online and say something bad about the police or the government or anything. And who knows when they'll see you again. That's not even mentioning if you're a fucking Uyghur. So no, I'm, I have no patience for whataboutisms when it comes to America. America's horrible in so many ways, but come on.
Yeah, you can make simple. I always say it's impossible to live a moral economic life in modern society, but you can eat around the edges. And it's imperative, by the way, the people above you in in quotes in a structure to make the right decisions, like you did, to not put people in that position. It's a smaller example, but it's why we make and sell American merch. It's so that you don't have to make the decision to buy Chinese or American merch from me. You only have the option to buy American merch, right? That's it.
And the ironic part is, though, you and I are financially privileged enough that we can make those choices. I think that's also an important distinction, because a lot of times it gets painted as nobility. And it is that, but you're only as noble as you're allowed to be. And in this country, that permission comes usually from finances. So I can afford to tell Tencent to fuck off, but not everybody can.
Right. Oh my God. I couldn't imagine being beholden to them. And this actually brings me to the final topic I wanted to ask you about, ironically, because I was thinking about the website, was it Fanbyte, that's owned by Tencent?
Oh, right. That reporter.
Which is hysterical. Like, I just think that's so hysterical. It's like, just write anything about Taiwan, please. But
like, I was in the country of Taiwan last week.
Yeah,
that.
Yeah, he'd be disappeared.
He would. He totally would.
So, I wanted to ask about JK Rowling and Hogwarts Legacy and kind of the fiasco about this. And I don't want to get too into your personal life. I don't know what people know and don't know about it. I'll leave that up to you.
I'm more than happy to share whatever you want to talk about within I mean, I assume what you're talking about is I have a son, I have a trans son.
Right.
I will tell you whatever you want to know from a parent and a father's perspective. Obviously, his story is his to share.
Of course.
But in terms of my experience with it within reason, of course, I'm happy to talk about it.
And I don't mean in any disrespect. I'm just trying to wrap make sure I'm accurately doing this. So that's female to male?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sure. All right. Okay. So I'm kind of curious, because you're the parent, and I thought about you immediately. That's why I emailed you a couple of weeks ago. I know you're a parent.
Which I didn't know, by the way, and I didn't see it. And it was so funny, like probably 10 times on my show every day. I was like, email Colin, email Colin. And I'm like, I did. I did. I'm talking to him, but I think they're behind on your shows.
Yeah, they are.
So
No big
it
deal.
was great.
I'm glad
No, it was
you're.
funny. I was just like, oh, I got it. We're talking.
Yeah,
So
I'm glad you got it. And because I
yeah.
thought about you. I'm like, I feel like I have gay people close to me in my family, but not
Mhm.
trans people. Like
Uh-huh.
I've known trans people and I have no
Yep.
problems with them, but it's not like I know someone well enough to be able to like really pick their brain. I feel
Okay.
like I thought about you because there's this whole fiasco around Hogwarts Legacy and JK Rowling and kind of the boycott. And I feel like I feel in my heart and my soul exactly what's going to end up happening with this game in the industry. This game will sell 10 million copies probably,
Oh yeah, totally.
but it's going to get lambasted and destroyed, I think, in the industry and probably not treated fairly, for better or for worse.
When you say in the industry, you mean like
Media, like
reviews?
mainstream media, let's say. Yeah, let's
But you
say
mean reviews?
Yeah, I think it's fair to assume that the reviews will not be fair to this game. Yes.
Okay.
I think that's maybe not all, but I think that, I don't know, if you see that Metacritic number and it's a little soft, I wouldn't be super surprised about that. But
I could see that.
But I'm curious what you make of, and we could talk about separating the artist from the product and all that, but I'm kind of just curious what you think about the hullabaloo of this. And as a father of a trans son, do you feel like there is a righteousness in the reaction to this product, and how do you feel about this product kind of being the big fall set piece of the industry coming up?
Well, first off, I think it looks great. I think it looks fucking awesome. I'm 51, so I was in my mid 20s when Harry Potter first came out. So I know there's a lot of people one generation younger that it was a real, uh, you know, foundational aspect to their culture, probably like Indiana Jones and Star Wars was with me. Um, so I don't come to it as a mega fan, but when I saw that trailer or that state of play, it looked like it just looked like one of those great holiday games, even though I'm in San Diego and it never snows, but I'm like, you want to be playing it inside. It's kind of like you want hot chocolate and a fire and you want snow outside and you want to lose yourself in that game for all of your, Christmas vacation. It just looks like a wonderfully scrumptious, beautiful world to be in, explore. The team seems passionate about it. Obviously it's marketing, who knows, but I was very impressed by the trailer. And I do hope it does well. I asked my son, because here's the thing, it's the same thing with like, the George Floyd stuff that's going on. Like whenever there's like a big controversy or issue with racism or homophobia or trans people or Muslim people, I mean, I go out to them and I say, talk to me about this if you're willing. It's not their job to educate me, but if they're willing to talk to me about it, it's like, hey, Muslim friend of mine that I worked with at the office back when I worked. Everybody's saying the Quran is this book that is, about murder and awful and all this. This woman was a devout Muslim, but she was also a very progressive person. And I was like, tell me about that. So I go to my son and I say, there's things going on with JK Rowling's game, or not her game, but Wizarding World. What do you think about that? Should I buy it? Should people buy it? And and my son is like, she JK Rowling is like, is she how did he put it? He said, if the money is going directly to someone who is funding transphobic hate, like with Chick-fil-A for a while, the guy who was the CEO was literally giving money from
Cathy.
Chick-fil-A. Yeah. Now he's doing it with his own money, but not Chick-fil-A's money. It's still his own money, but whatever. But he was giving it to like gay conversion camps and things that were really bad. And so I'm like, I wouldn't, and I still don't eat there because I don't want any of my money going to that.
Fair enough.
But I said to my son, I said, well, okay, so she's going to get money. If I pay $60 for this game, she's going to get $1.20. I don't know what she gets, but she's going to get 50 cents, 20 cents, whatever. And he's like, yeah, but she's not like out there with that money going, I want to open up the JK Rowling detransition school. She's just like, has an idea that I don't agree with. And I certainly don't agree with. So what? So he's like,
very mature. It's a mature output.
Well, yeah, and I had to, and I've gone to Twitter because I've read a lot of the stuff that she said, and I don't agree with it. And I know that there are trans people, and I had a couple of trans people, and I was trying to reach out to them the day before the show because I knew we were going to talk about this, but I couldn't reach them. That talked to me about how her statements were actually harmful. And so there is a view out there. And if you're listening and you believe that, I'm not ignoring that. It wasn't tip of mind what they said about why it was harmful, because when I went back and looked at it, I was like, a lot of the stuff she's saying I think is wrong, or incorrect or mean. And clearly she's got a weird kind of dog in this fight that's more than what she's really on about, because she goes on more about it than I think anyone who
Well, I
doesn't
think
have
like
an issue.
isn't one of her Robert Galbraith characters like a trans murderer or something like
I
that?
believe, yeah, I haven't read the book, but
Yeah.
when she wrote, yeah, in her pseudonym or
And she was
whatever.
abused pretty badly by
Oh
a
yeah,
man, and I think that has a lot to do with like women's spaces and all that. I think it's very
I,
psychological. There's no doubt it
that's
goes
right.
deep back into her
In
psychosis.
all of that, I mean, even when you watch movies like, I think it was like The Red Pill or something, where you hear men's rights advocates talk about, there's a lot of shelters and there's a lot of services that we as men need, but we don't get. I mean, there's a lot of those stories where everybody, whether you're straight or gay, or whether you're cis or whether you're trans or man or woman, a lot of people, I think that's just a state of our society right now, feel like they're not taken care of by a government that they own and that they fund. But I think in the case of Rowling, though, yeah, I mean, she's definitely got some baggage that must be contributing. But fundamentally, I think what she said is wrong. I think it's mean. But you know, I think what would be worse, in the same way that I wouldn't go to war for many things. I would go to war to fight for people's rights to express themselves as anything that they are, in terms of gender, in terms of who they want to sleep with, religion, whatever. Um, I also would go to war to support her right to express an idea I think is stupid. I don't think she's right, but the idea that I'm not going to consume any of her work just because I don't like some of her ideas, I don't get into that. But I would get into it if there was a direct connection that I could go, my money is going to hurt people. No, I'm not supporting your shit. But that hasn't really proven out with JK Rowling, as
Yeah.
far as we know.
Yeah, it's interesting insight, very interesting insight. Because I think we've come to a moment in society that's pretty important, this like inflection point, where I think the slow cobbling up of rights over time, right? Like going back to women's rights and the suffragettes and all of that, and then obviously the civil rights movement, gay rights, all of this. I think I look at these as, I don't even know what the right terminology would be in sociology or something, but like an affirmative right. In other words, what is a black man voting or a black man having the equal rights to me? How does that affect anyone negatively at all? It makes society more positive. It's more
No,
equal,
there's a
right?
lot of ways it affects negatively.
Well, I'm sorry. Please go on.
Not for me,
Oh,
not
so
for you. But if you're a white dude trying to hold on to your power, and even though you may not know you're racist or think you're racist, I'm not saying you or me, I'm saying that there's a lot of people that would love to take everybody who doesn't look and think and act like them and push them out of the decision-making process. Of course, that would benefit them.
right. Okay. So I understand that. I guess I should be more specific in saying that's one step forward. Like we see through that. Okay, you're racist. You're a bigot,
Oh, okay.
right?
Yeah.
Like,
Okay. Got it.
but with the trans rights issues, I feel like for the
Right.
first time, in my opinion, we've come
Mhm.
to a situation where it doesn't only affect like 10 years ago or
Yeah.
so, if someone would be like, I want to be, I'm a trans woman or I'm a trans man. I'm like, cool. You're a trans man, you're a trans woman. We'll learn about that. I'll call you by your pronouns and all of that. But it's kind of come to a point, I think some people look at it, and it's a little extreme to say, but it's like, women have penises and men can have babies, right? Now people are like,
Well,
wait a minute,
I gotta get my head around that. Women have. I understand what you're
you know
saying.
what I mean?
Yes.
And people are like, wait, what? And then you read something where it's like, if a man doesn't want to have sex with a trans woman, he's a transphobe, and it's like, wait, what? And then it kind of, the ball starts rolling, and before you know it, you're a few years beyond this point of normalcy, and you're like, wait a minute, we've gone, I think, too far down this weird road where the rights are now eroding on people's beliefs in actual reality. And with trans, for instance, in athletics, for instance, right, with Leah Thomas in the pool destroying Olympic female,
Mhm.
swimmers, or the under 15 Houston, Texas boys soccer team beating the World Cup women's team in a scrimmage, right? Like, so I look at these things and I feel like people are just finally, I think, they're not they're not hateful. I mean, I can't speak for everyone. I don't think people have any, or I think the average person's like, I don't mind what you do. I don't mind what you want to be called. I don't mind what your gender is. Do whatever you want. But we have to have some sort of bounds of reality where a person who has the male testosterone and went through male puberty can't compete against my girl in college because it's not fair, you know? And like, it's those kinds of things that I think bring this conversation to the fore, as opposed to it being more like the gay, like no one even talks about gay marriage anymore. It's over, right?
There was a long time they had to fight for quote normalcy, and in some places it's still looked down on.
And that's true. But I think the weird inflection point is fed by intersectionality, in the sense that I think what I would call old gays, and I think we all know what they're talking about. I know lots of gay people, and the old gays, like the gays that came up when it's like, I live with my roommate, right? Or like my cousin lived with his roommate.
All the
right?
Golden Girls were gay.
Right.
Even the mother-daughter.
So like the old gays, like the guys I lived with in San Francisco, like the old guys in the cash and stuff, I think they're looking at this and being like, our movement is being co-opted actually by this other thing and making everything muddled to all of our deficits. And I think the Hogwarts Legacy fight and the JK Rowling fight is just gaming's specific fight with this tension in society that I think is it's rearing its head with transgender story time or whatever fucking, catastrophic stuff's happening on Fox News, and conversion therapy and hormone suppressors and all this stuff. It's like everywhere there's a fight. And I just think that in the gaming industry, this is just the front of
I mean,
fight.
it could be the way it could be the clothes it wears when it's in the gaming world, but you're saying it's the same,
right?
It's just the same thing.
It's a piece of the culture war, and
I mean, and it is a certainly I can speak to it from a cis straight male's perspective, but that's all it is, right? So I'm probably going to be wrong about a bunch of stuff I'm about to say, but I can tell you that it goes so deep and there's so many aspects to it that it really kind of depends what you're talking about. Unfortunately, we are in a, it's a soundbite culture. It's always been that. It's always been if it bleeds, it leads culture. And that, coupled with a lack of media literacy on the part of, students, and those two things together have created just a sense of an issue that's black and white that is nowhere near being black and white, right? So if you're, the trans community is absolutely, from my understanding, in a great deal of danger when they step outside the house, especially trans women, sorry. Men are very threatened by it. They're very disturbed by it. It's confusing. It's odd. And I get it. The first trans person I knew was before I knew my son was trans. And the first couple of weeks when I didn't know if this was a he or a she, it was novel. It was weird. I'm living in California, and I had never, at least knowingly, met a trans person. And it wasn't that I was being cruel to the person. It was so exotic and strange that I can't, I've had gay people in my, not that trans has anything to do with gay, but I've had people on that LGBT group since I was a child in my family. But this was a new one for me. And even with that background, it was like, wait, this is, what bathroom do you use? And I don't understand. Are you this? Are you that? But once it becomes normalized in the sense of like, these are just fucking people trying to have as good of a life as you're trying to have. And you realize how much cruelty and hate crimes they deal with, and just shaming. I mean, can you imagine, people talk a lot about the teenage suicide rate of trans kids. Of course, I mean, I don't know if, I don't think, and I've never heard that there's any physiological reasons behind that. I don't know. I mean, everything's physiological. There is no free will, but you know what I'm saying? But the idea, though, that can you imagine being a member of that community and having the fucking bravery to walk the halls in school and be, this is who I am, and all the, even if you're a cis straight kid, with no outward differentiators, you're still going to get bullied and cyberbullied and picked on and driven to awful decisions. Imagine it for that kid. So that's real. And I do think that, and that hasn't necessarily it's gotten better in certain cities and states, but it's not like being gay where it's like, it's accepted enough that unless you're in very interesting situations in parts of the country, you're not worried as much about it as they were in the 70s and 80s with like Matthew Shepard and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, that was horrible.
So I think, first off, I always come to it from that perspective before anything, is that these are humans, they're suffering, they're being treated like garbage by a lot of people, they're being mocked, being shamed. And I think that is just, that always has to be number one, especially when you're dealing with kids. It's like, are you out of your fucking mind? These are children. You're breaking their fucking hearts. You're breaking their spirits. And it's all the shit that's happening in Florida, the shit that just happened in Alabama. It's insane in terms of the laws that are being passed and whatnot. The sports thing, I think the sport thing is a great opportunity. It's like a percentage of the people who are complaining about the sports stuff are just transphobes and they're assholes, and it's something they can grab onto that their heads can get around, that's black and white and simple, and they're like, bad, see, bad, bad, bad. That's a percentage of them. But of course there is a conversation about fair play. Of course there's a conversation that needs to be had about how do we navigate this? But when was the last time anybody gave a fuck about women's sports?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, right. Yeah. But I will say though, that to me, and a lot of people don't want to hear this, but we have better science now than we had back in the day when someone first got the idea. I guess it was the Olympics in Greece. I don't know when it was, of like, let's have male and female athletes. Well, now it's like, you know what, why even do that? It's like, it's just like, why not just do all sports like boxing? It's like, look, you have this much muscle mass, you have this much testosterone, you're this tall, you're this weight. If everybody's concerned about fair play, it doesn't matter what you got betwixt your legs, just check these 12 boxes to determine where you best compete. It's kind of like you go into a game of Hearthstone, or you go into a game of I don't fucking know what's the Fortnite, and they're gonna, not Fortnite, but Hearthstone or serious MLG games, and they're not just gonna match you with your sex. Oh, all girls play together. They're gonna go, this guy has this win ratio, this girl has this win ratio. They play these cards. We're trying to put people together for the best game. If we have the science to do it better than male and female, why don't we just, if it's not a trans issue and a hate issue, then why don't we solve it with the most obvious way and just say, look, there's no reason the people on that team that won the scrimmage against the girls soccer team should have played the girls soccer team. But that's not because they're girls and not because these guys are guys. It's because they didn't hit the formula. They didn't hit the check boxes. I don't know why it's so hard for people, but I think it's because they really want to make it about something that sounds like they have it figured out. See, trans is bad. Trans makes me uncomfortable. I've been sold a bill of goods by all these politicians that tell me that, I don't know, trans people are going to, I don't know what they think they're going to do. It's the most ridiculous thing in the world. And so they kind of go to the easy attack, where it's like, you can actually solve the problem you say you have, which is fairness in sports. But that's not really a lot of people's problems. If it was, that problem has a solve.
Yeah. I use that just, totally. I use that just as an example, because I think a lot of this. No,
but take the Disney stuff, right? All the people outside, talking about, oh, Disney wants to have more gay characters and trans characters. And it's like, we're going to, they can boycott Disney. I support that. They have their right to not spend their ducats on those folks. That's fine. But the idea that they're grooming children, or that they're in danger of what, I don't know. It's like, listen, my son was raised with nothing but, it's not like I went out because I didn't know he was trans, right? I didn't, when he was 8, I wasn't going, we're not going to show you, I don't fucking know, Princess and the Frog. We're not going to show you Toy Story 3. I'm going to go out and find some weird fucking animation that's more transy. And then that's why he became trans. Right. He was raised with all the cisgender media that everybody else was raised with. And he still sat at the kitchen table with us one night. And the only way, I won't tell you how he came out, but he came out to us. That's his story. It's a great story. But the only way he came out to us, it was very hard for him. And this is a kid, it's like, nobody groomed that kid to be trans. Who would choose that?
Right. That's that's what I often think. I'm glad you said that about anyone that's kind of like off the beaten path, right? Is like, why would they voluntarily choose to do to have
even
a
Chris
different
Rock
life?
has a joke. He's like, I'm rich. I'm a black rich man, and I would trade with a middle class white guy in a heartbeat. And that's Chris Rock. So yeah, I mean, who chooses the class in the RPG that starts with a disadvantage? Why? It's like, I'll play the warrior, but I want the one that doesn't have a leg and can't see out of one eye. That's my character for the game. I mean, what? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, you have very interesting insight. I feel like I'm gonna be paying close attention to this conversation moving forward in our sphere, because I feel like it is, like you noted, it's a major culture war, and the gaming industry is sometimes the impetus for culture wars, and then I think sometimes it is the recipient of culture wars, and I think this is one of those times when it's going to be the recipient of a culture war, and I'll be fascinated to find how the game does, how it sells, how it does critically, how people receive it, and all the rest. And I'm of the mind that specificity is like the best tool we have in solving these problems. And so I know it's not what, like, because I think everyone's equal. I say that we're all born free. We're all born exactly the same. And then immediately you find yourself in the situation that either gives you luck and a better outcome or not. Right. So I was born in America, came in, here I am, born white, right?
White
male
in America,
right,
male,
great.
cis, straight.
So that's pretty much the historic, rolling sixes. It doesn't get much better than that.
But the problem is you can't say that to people, because a lot of white people get upset with that, and they go, I've had problems. It's like, yes, I know. But they think that it's like, there's no nuanced fucking thinking. It's like, no one is saying a person who rolls all sixes cannot have problems. And I'm sure you've had problems. We all have our bags of hammers we got to carry around and deal with. But that doesn't mean that it's also false that Colin rolled all sixes.
Right. It just means that I didn't have to deal with these other things that people may have had to deal with. It doesn't mean that I didn't fight or work hard, and people know that. But I think
not everybody knows that. But anyway, keep going.
No, I was just going to say, like, in the toolkit of specificity, I feel like a lot of it is just like, let's be specific. And we don't have to get any further into this if we don't want to, but my thought is just like, man, trans man, woman, trans woman, and then maybe like a fifth category of like asexual or whatever. And then you realize 99.7% of people are man or woman. And then you have these other groups and you can identify them, and they have equal rights and equal treatment and all of the rest. And that's it. Right. And I feel like that's why I think there's a problem, and why it's brewing is because some people are like, but no, this is a woman that's indistinguishable from a biological woman. Right. And
why is that a problem for people though? What do you mean?
Well, because why would it be a problem that a person that was born a man says that they're indistinguishable from a person that was born a woman and want to share
Oh no, are you saying like visually, like you could see a woman?
That doesn't matter at all. I'm not talking about the visual stuff at all. I'm talking about the perspective of saying, like, it's what I said earlier about, are you a transphobe if you're a straight man who won't have sex with a trans woman?
Well, my
answer is like, I wouldn't. There's no way I could get over that hurdle, right? But I don't think that means that I hate you, because I don't, right? And that's why I think that's where I think the space is that this is all brewing, and if we don't get to that level of specificity and education, like you said, and gradient talking, then I think it just perpetuates over and over again. And I think that's why it is sad. Like, I don't know why people don't understand generally, Jaffe, that like you don't have to say something about everything. And like sometimes if you have something mean to say, I have mean things to say all the time, right? To people every fucking day of my life. But you just don't say it, right? Like you don't have to. That's what
the burner Twitter account's for.
Right. I don't even tweet anymore, because I was like,
don't. I know your fake account.
Yeah,
I know your Mitt Romney account.
My Mitt Romney. So it's like, I feel like those are going to be all the tools that I hope we can kind of in the gaming industry start gleaming onto and having better conversations. But I think it requires, and I hate to toot our own horn, but I think it requires shows like ours and conversations like these, because there has to be an open-minded space to allow for education. And I'm so glad you brought that up when you had your first interaction with a trans person. I remember when I was at IGN, there was in 2008, there was a trans person that came, we had like a meeting about this person. They worked at GameSpy, and it was like, in my mind, her entire thing was like, I just want to live discreetly as a woman. Right. And everyone's like, okay. And that was the end of that, right? And it seems
Right.
so quaint, right? Like thinking back 15 years
I
and
think,
how much has
yeah, but
changed.
what I do want to say, and again, I can't speak to this with any authority other than just a periphery character on my son's trans journey, and then he has friends who are trans in their journey. Um, but I think sometimes this idea of making something indistinguishable, and I don't know if this is right, but it feels right. That when a lot of trans people or trans allies talk about, well, it is they are a woman, and you're like, yes, but I would rather just say trans woman or whatever. I think there is because there is so much need in the trans community to fight for simply the right to exist. I think, and because of social media, where people have been able to find each other in their group faster than any other time, like a marginalized group, it wasn't like gay rights in the 70s with Harvey Milk and stuff, where you had to like, read a zine about this thing that's happening in San Francisco if you're a kid in Iowa and you're feeling like you might be a gay person. This is like instantly you have your people, right? So there's a bravery, which is good, that comes with that camaraderie and community. And I think in that there is a pushback on the part of people, I think, in the trans community that says, if you say, and again, my son has no problem if you call him a trans male. He doesn't feel like a trans male. In his mind and in my mind, he is a male.
Mm.
But that's asking people who've never met a trans person, who don't understand trans people, to have a level of insight and familiarity with a trans person, to go to have a level of sort of sophisticated awareness about trans people, that you go, of course you don't want to be called a trans man or a trans woman, because you, from the moment you had an awareness of gender, you were a man, you were a woman, you just had all this shit put on you that you're like, this is not for me, this is not who I am. And so I understand that the pushback without the education, and it's not their job to educate, it just simply isn't. It would behoove any marginalized community to educate, but it's not their responsibility to train someone into not being an asshole, right? People should just not be an asshole. But that said, you don't know what you don't know, right? And so I think it's a combination of that pushback on the part of the trans community to say, no, you are saying things that are hurtful and cruel and mean, and you're trying to back it up by saying, well, I'm just being logical, not you, but this thought. And they're saying, you don't bother to understand where I'm coming from, and in that, I don't have the time to give a fuck about your ignorance. I'm telling you it's insulting, and you're choosing to argue with me what the trans experience is. And so again, I don't blame someone who doesn't know that, but I understand why the trans community pushes back when they say, we're not going to take the crumbs. We're not going to go like, you can have water, but you can have water from the fountain that says trans. It's like, no, in that person's mind, in my mind, if you met my son, it's not performative. It is not, he is my son. He is male. Do I know that he was born with a vagina? Absolutely. I was there. I was there when the umbilical cord pulled him back into his mother, and the midwife is like, oh shit, this hasn't happened before. And we're like, really? Because she got quiet all of a sudden.
That's like the last thing you want to hear during a pregnancy is, oh, I've never seen that before.
Well, no, we were all talking politics. We were all liberal and shit while she's giving birth. And then suddenly she goes quiet. And we're like, what happened to the joking about George Bush? What you doing there, lady? And she's like, your kid just got pulled back in. It was obviously fine. Maybe that's how trans kids are born.
No, I was gonna say you had
like
a trans.
The womb changed the mind. It's like, nah,
I was gonna say it was the George Bush stuff that was like that made him trans.
That's exactly right. You're like, fuck this shit. But yeah, it's I don't, because I have the experience of it. I don't. A lot of people might think, like I've heard people say this about trans people. It's like, oh, why are you helping with their delusion, or why are you playing along? I'm like, I'm not playing along. I love this kid. I know how he feels about himself. I've seen what he was like before he had any thought of this. And he was incredibly happy because he didn't have society telling him. And then he hits adolescence, and suddenly gender becomes a much more pronounced, important part of your life. And I saw how anxious and depressed that made him. And I've seen what a beam of light has turned on again with this kid who is social and popular, has tons of friends, tons of passion since he came out, and has decided to sort of live as he is. And so that's just my kid. And yes, he's male. Was he born with a vagina? Yep, he was. But so what? Was he born with breasts? Yep. Doesn't have many more, but he was born with them.
It's
the one thing I'll tell you though. Yeah. Sorry, one more thing I want to say about this though, because I think it's important. A lot of people talk about, like there's this woman that came out, this doctor recently in the UK. She's trans. She transitioned 20 years ago, whatever, and she's helped a lot of kids transition. And she's now come out and said, oh, it's an epidemic, it's too much, blah, blah, blah. But then if you actually, and a lot of people cite that these days, that's like the new talking point.
Yeah, Abigail Shire wrote that whole book.
Right.
Basically all about that.
If you look at what she says, a big part of what she says is, and I don't know if this is true, but let's assume it is. She's like, kids are going to doctors and saying, I'm trans, I want hormone blockers. And they just get them. Right. Almost like when they describe kids just getting Prozac and ADD medicine, just, right. Well, I don't agree with that. My son, we went through, multiple physiological doctors. We went through 2 therapists, one of which specialized in trans people. We spent a year with him really going, where are we at with this? What do you like about this? What's working? And it wasn't until we had all the facts and we had all this experience and he had gone through a lot of, inner work, that we were like, oh, this is who you are. All right, let's do it. But this idea that there's just this willy-nilly, it's like, Mom, I don't feel like a boy. Here, let me use these scissors I got from Rite Aid and cut off your dick. It's like, that's not happening. That might be a fringe thing that, you learn about in some, it's always the most salacious stuff gets the news, but sure. That's not the average trans experience. It's a ridiculous cartoonification that's nothing but cruel and shows bad faith and caring about other people.
Well, fair enough. What I was going to say, I'm sorry to interrupt you earlier, was that I wanted to leave it on what you had to say, because I feel like you have better insight than me. And it's certainly, I hope, different sort of something different, like something to throw into the mix that will give people something to think about. Because I don't know what the answer is. I just know.
I think the answer is time, and we're going to have a lot of people get hurt and a lot of people yell, and eventually people are going to die, and they're going to be more like you and me when it comes to gay people, or they're going to be more like people from the earlier generation when it comes to civil rights. It just takes time, and it's awful, and it's unacceptable.
Yeah,
and
so
I hate it.
It's inexorable, basically. It's just it's happening. Yeah, I think that there's something to that for sure.
But I'm playing fucking JK Rowling's game. It's not even her game, but I'm playing that fucking game. It looks awesome. Don't you think it looks great?
Oh my God, I think it looks wonderful. What I was saying on the show is I read the first 3 books when I was in high school, and then I just kind of fell off and saw the movies. But it's like, it's making me want to be, it feels like a door back in, right? To be like, oh.
Yeah, I started watching the movies again after that state of play. I watched Chamber of Secrets or whatever, Philosopher's Stone or whatever it was. Because I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. So I'm excited.
I think it looks wonderful. I feel like Sony was very wise to get in on that marketing. So
agree.
Well, Mr. Jaffe, it's always wonderful to see you. And
it is wonderful to see you too, Colin. One moment, please.
Yeah.
One moment, please.
Oh, there it is.
He's
got his pipe.
I'm your Sherlock Holmes to your Moriarty.
I wanted to say, and again, it's not it's not just because I want to have sex with you, but I feel like it bothers me when I hear you say, and sometimes see people treating you poorly, because I don't feel like they understand the kind of treasure you are. You're a man, and here's what I'm going to say. You're a man who was at the very, very, very beginning of PlayStation, right? Making games for it. You have this experience in AAA space that's invaluable from basically first, second, and third party perspectives. You've made a cacophony of different types of games over time, and you have amazing insight. And unlike many others, you are willing to talk about it. And the good and the bad, right? The ugly and the wonderful. You're willing to talk about it. And I feel like, I don't think people really realize how special that is, because it doesn't happen very often.
I appreciate that. I do. To that real quick, I just want to say that the ironic part about it is making yourself accessible and allowing people to see you're human and that you can fuck up and that you share things and all this is the very thing that to them makes it okay for you to be a target to them. But when you what the ironic part is, it's like all the people that will not talk to you because it will hurt their bottom line, that will not engage with you, that will continue to just be like only say the easy good stuff that you want to hear. Those are the people that you're celebrating and holding on a pedestal. Those are the people that you should be demanding more out of. I'm being honest with you. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to like it, but at least hey, I at least appreciate the guy's not going to fucking lie to me just to get me to buy his game, but it doesn't work that way. People are more willing, again, media literacy, man. People are more willing to see the guy on the pedestal and go, that's real. It's like, that ain't real. None of that. How many fucking developers did you interview that were putting on a show for you?
Oh yeah, definitely. PR training and all the rest. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, it's so gross. Didn't you ever just want to say, dude, or maybe you did, I don't know, but didn't you ever just want to say, dude, can you just fucking talk to me like a person, like a human?
I would have died for that. But of course, dealing with Sony so much in the freaking PR machine that they put together, which you're very familiar with. That's why it was so refreshing to talk to you, because for some reason you just didn't care what they had to say, which I always loved.
No.
So
because they were wrong and I was right. Boom! Oh, okay.
I can't say that.
Colin, thank you for inviting me. I always love coming on your show.
Yeah,
best to you and all the boys and the puppy and the lady friend.
Thank you. I appreciate that, my friend.
Are we marrying or are we not marrying?
No, I think we are. We are. We're talking about it, and I think it's going to happen. I can't let.
Are you going to do a big fancy proposal, or it's like you don't do that?
I would do whatever she would want to do, but I know that she kind of would want something more low key. So that's
be careful. Be careful. I'm sitting at dinner last night.
Yep.
I got to go. You got to go too. But I'm sitting at dinner last night. My family, my ex is here, and we're talking about how I proposed to her. And she says, yeah, you just rolled over in bed in our shitty rental in Santa Monica, and you said you want to get married. And I said, yeah, because you told me you wanted something super low key. You didn't want something schmaltzy and all that. And she's like, yeah, but you could have at least brushed your fucking teeth. And I'm like, well, you said you wanted low key. This was low key. So I'm just saying, Colin, be careful.
Oh, fair enough. That's a good advice. Yeah, I
goddamn right.
Yeah, I can't let this one get away. But
good.
But my friend, I appreciate you. It's always wonderful to see you. You are welcome here anytime, and be very well. And thank you all out there for your kind words as well, or for your kindness for Sacred Symbols, all the rest. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
All right, bye guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.